who presented the multi-code family audit to city council. I know there was some up in the airness about that construction excise tax. I'm assuming that this document, the final version of it, am I right in assuming that the final version of this document will be pending any decisions made about the CET?
Doug, you have to unmute yourself.
Oh, I like talking to myself.
But I don't hear you.
Yes, the council did get a presentation on the construction excise tax. They did not provide any direction, and we just gave them a briefing on the program. It's probably a good time that I will be giving or answering questions from the city council on this HPS as well on March 6th. So Casey, yes, you know, the CET, it is an adopted program now. Where it might go in the future, I do not know.
Okay, I forgot it was in place right now.
And it might be something that if the city council makes a change in the future, after the housing strategy, in other words, after we're finished the project, the city could make a change to its HPS also. Any other questions or comments? Okay. So then the partners, what we've tried to do is summarize who partners would be and give a little bit of information about their potential role. All of these actions are meant to have a strong city role in them. A few of them, the city role is a little bit weaker, like on Action A, because that's really led by the Workforce Housing Consortium. And the city is providing technical assistance and support. Were there any comments about major partners that we were missing? It's not meant to name all the names. In a lot of ways, the intention with this partner chart is to convey the fact that the city isn't in this alone, and in fact can't do a lot of this alone, and must have other partners that are working with the city to implement this successfully. All right, then I'm gonna move on to the implementation schedule. You haven't seen this yet because we just developed it last week because we wanted to have information here for you to look at. And I would say that this is the piece that is very subject to change, especially once we have input from the city council. The idea here is in the HPS, a city is required to adopt actions and adoption might be to take some official action. And you know, something like a zoning code change, that's a very specific action that we know exactly how that looks. What would the action be that's the official action for adopting support of the Workforce Consortium, Housing Consortium? It could be something, Doug, I always mess these terms up, but like I think a city council could make a resolution that it's going to do X and such to support the Workforce Housing Consortium. Is that the right word?
Yes, they do have that option.
And so then the city has essentially said, we're doing this officially. And then the implementation phase is going and implementing it. So something like reducing system development charge for affordable housing, the actual action might well be about, I doubt the city is going to revise its SDC methodology next year, but you know, make the official decision that it will pay SDCs for certain types of affordable housing through CET revenues. And that might be a city resolution, city council resolution. The same thing with implementing the multi-unit property tax exemption. The city would have to develop what its criteria is for MUPD, where MUPD will apply, what it will require city developers to do, and what the city is giving in return for that. In other words, the length of the property tax exemption, whether all of the overlapping property taxing districts are on board. All of that happens before adoption happens in 2026. So do things look like they're in a reasonable position on this? Do you have comments on how we're looking at this? We're trying not to put it all into 1 year because of staff. Of course, staff wouldn't be able to do it all in 1 year, but trying not to put too much out too far.
Just to clarify, letter K, does it not have an adoption because it already is adopted? Is that what that means?
Yeah, it is adopted. So yeah, and the reason it would it's out as far as it is that funds just wouldn't be available. Funds are building up in the urban renewal district and they wouldn't be available for the first years.
I would probably just add in, if you look at H and I, just because we receive a variety of grants from different sources and so forth, and either having federal funding for those grants or state funding, supporting fair housing laws is something we already do. As Beth said, potentially it's adopting a resolution from the council about specifically what they want to do. And informational resources, we already have information up to the library as well. We coordinate with the housing authority. So that's part of the reason put those in, that first year. And A up top is because the Workforce Housing Consortium is already underway. They were the $3 million was granted for the benefit of the city for workforce housing, and there's a consortium that's diligently working on that now, and there'll be a lot more activity in 2023. So once you go out to 2024 and beyond, it was Beth and Leanne and I and our best observation about when something could occur. So it's subject for this group to say, does that sound reasonable, look reasonable? Do we need to move something out further in time?
I was just going to say, I mean, I think it has to be, possible to even have the time and stuff to work on this. So yeah, I don't expect it to get more aggressive than this. There's a part of me that wishes that, like supporting the preservation of manufactured home parks could be sooner, just because it feels like that's one of our few last bastions of affordable housing, around, or that kind of thing, and just to preserve as much as we can. But again, what do you move out? There's a part of me that wonders if the land bank thing, how possible it is that it's going to happen without swap, but again, I don't feel strongly enough about any of it to say it should be different.
Larry, what I would suggest is if there was a manufactured home park that was going to change uses, that there's state requirements that basically people have to be notified a fair bit ahead of time, with the intention, I think, that an action could be taken. So since the city, understands the potential actions, and a lot of that is in coordinating with nonprofits, I would have to imagine that, if a manufactured home park was, the owner said, I'm selling it, and, for redevelopment in 2024, I would have to imagine that the city would do what it could at that point to help the owners of the units in the park.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And yeah, I have no information that says that there's any of them on the block or anything right now, or anything like that. But.
And I've also heard that the state has a bill in around funding around manufactured home park preservation. And so I have to imagine if funding becomes available, it's not going to be enough funding across the whole state in one legislative session. But still, Casey, I've interrupted you twice at least.
No, I had a basically the exact same question as Larry, and so I'm happy to hear that that if something were to come to the city's attention that we were about to imminently lose one of our existing parks, that something could be done. And maybe the city could even adjust this timeline.
Yes.
These are goals, right? It's not like you couldn't wait that long to implement it.
And so that is a really good question. Why does this schedule matter? Well, the city can always do things early. But let's talk about the manufactured home park piece. If the city hasn't taken action by the end of 2027, then the city would be required to report to the state why it hasn't taken action and how it's going to take action, or what strategy it's going to substitute in place of that action. So the city is required to report as each of these adoption points, if it misses the adoption point. And the city is also required to report at the end of 4 years. So at the midpoint. So yeah.
Thank you. That's great clarification.
Certainly. I apologize for not mentioning that earlier. And I would imagine if some great opportunity came up in 2024, and, because of, I don't know, the preservation of manufactured home parks, the city wasn't able to look at reducing permit fees until the next year. I would imagine the city would amend it to HPS and do it that way. Are there any other questions or comments on this? Okay. Then going back to you all, first of all, do you have any questions about information or comments on information in the HPS report that you wanted to talk about? I'm happy to zoom to wherever. Realize the document hasn't been proofread, I don't think yet. So, proofreading errors, you can always tell Doug about them, but otherwise we'll be catching those. Casey?
I had a few.
Mhm.
My first question is a clarifying question. Whenever the term developer is used, does that mean private for profit, or does that also include nonprofit, government, whoever?
It would include both, and presumably the context would help clarify it. So if we were talking about developers as they related to, hold on for a moment, something like MUPD, the multi-unit property tax exemption, I'm showing this because that tells me that it's a developer of low and moderate income housing. But if I was talking about developer, I don't know, as it related to, let's say, SDCs for affordable housing, that would refer to nonprofit or developer of income restricted housing.
And then I had a request for an addition. This is just based on like where, like I was trying, we've read this report or versions of it before, and some other documents are very similar, but I was trying to read at least like the intro part with fresh eyes, and I found the explanation of what it means to be cost burdened, or what it means for a price to be considered affordable in page 18. And I was wondering if it could also be listed earlier in the document so that it shows up a couple of times. I was just realizing, oh, I haven't seen the definition yet. Or if it was there, then I just missed it.
So I think what you're saying is about households that are paying more than 30% of their income on housing. So this definition, would it be satisfactory if that was discussed in the executive summary that I don't think exists right now? I'm not sure why all of that is appearing in that funny way. Would that be satisfactory?
I think so. I mean, anywhere sooner than page 18 is good, but leave it on page 18 as well.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Let me just make the note here. Okay. That's a fine request. Any others? Casey, I did so much work to shorten up chapter 1. I used to talk about cost burden all over chapter 1 that I probably, just chop that all out.
I understand.
So,
I have one, so in trying to read through things before the meeting, sort of quickly in a summary type fashion, I love tables. And the one where it was that we did look at that talked about partnerships, and if the partners were, or possible partners were listed in the table, I think that would be more helpful, because otherwise then you have to go see what A, B, C, D is and scroll through the text, to find who those partners are.
so I see what your issue is.
I see, and it's already kind of a full table. I get that, but I mean it's not like a do or die for me. Just a suggestion.
Yeah. Let me think about this. I need to look through it and consider that a little bit more. And part of the reason maybe not to is that the names of the partners shouldn't be, just the word, inclusive of all potential partners. In other words, if you have a new nonprofit come in, of course, you'd in 5 years, you'd want to be talking about them also. So sometimes names of partners are a little illustrative. But we'll keep that note in mind.
Or maybe say like when the city is the lead.
The city is the lead on all of these except this one.
Even if it's a land trust or that type of thing, like they're not going to be.
All right, the city is the lead on all of them except A and B.
Right, so if it's like, well, how would they be the lead on manufactured homes? They would be a coordinator, but they're not going to be a funder. They
All right,
wouldn't.
fine. We'll note whether the city is the lead or not, because that as you go down, you're right. Okay. Fair point, Melissa. Thank you. All right. Other comments? Or questions? It's not like this is the perfect document that can never be improved. So. Okay. Hey, Doug, in the version of this that's getting sent to the city council, can you make sure, I hope it hasn't been sent necessarily. I was noticing that we have a little technical problem that may not have come out. This is just a bunch of stuff got caught in a what is the word, link. So like this stuff all shouldn't be here on page 10. If it is, can you tell me, and I can get you a version that doesn't have that problem with that link.
Okay.
It's just Word being goofy. So
A lot of time trying to fix that and it happened again.
I know, that's honestly why I rarely use these kind of links, because they catch stuff. It's Word being buggy. All right. Any other questions?
Maybe
Comments?
you're gonna cover this, but I noticed that there's the upcoming meetings in February and March, and I'm wondering, like, are those just like a summary and presentation? And Beth, are you part of that, or is that just staff? Just, I mean, a lot of the city councilors are new, right? And the mayor, in fact.
So the upcoming meetings have changed somewhat, and I'll update this as we're talking. And perhaps Doug will talk about what the the upcoming meetings will be.
Yeah, so on March 6th, City Council at their meeting will have a discussion about the HPS document. We've moved the Planning Commission presentation to April 13th. And we've moved the City Council's final consideration of the document to May 1st.
And we just made those changes in the last day or two. So I'll put that back up so that you all have those. So those are the dates that Doug just mentioned. Casey, you've got a question or comment?
Yeah, and I hate to ask this, but I know I've referenced this before. Bottom of page 19. You've got a footnote number 4.
Let me make sure I get to the right place. Page 19. Number 4.
I was wondering if that was an average or if that is if the 1,700 is like specifically for 2-bedroom, 1 bath, and what year that data was collected.
So that data would have been collected in 2022. So Leanne might remember this or might be able to dig it up. It's specifically, we looked at Meadowbrook Villas, T&C apartments in 800 East 2nd Street. Do you remember, Leanne, if that was for 2-bedroom apartments or if that was an average? I know we talked to them.
Yeah, let me go back and look because it's been quite a while. I want to say 2 bedrooms, but I want to double check.
Based
Okay.
on data that was in the multifamily, I think it was a 2-bedroom. Just curious if that could just be clarified in this one as well.
Yep, we can, I'll make a note to clarify whether this is an average or 2 bedrooms.
Thank you.
And I believe it was an average of the few observations that we pulled.
Are there any other questions or comments? So then I'd like to hand it back to Doug a little bit to talk about the kind of recommendation that he's looking for and see what you all think about that a little.
So part of the charge of this Citizens Committee is to develop a recommendation that would be forwarded on to the Planning Commission and to the City Council. And so your recommendation could be as simple as the Citizens Advisory Committee recommends that the Planning Commission and the City Council consider the housing production strategy. You could take it another step and say, consider adopting the housing production strategy.
Are they allowed to adopt it without the HNA?
That is the $1 million question. So the housing needs analysis has been prepared. It was submitted into DLCD. DLCD, based upon direction, they said you need to adopt your HNA, and it shows that we have a deficiency in our land supply. So we submitted all of that paperwork into the state back in August of 2022. In October of 2022, they said, oh, you need to run your housing needs analysis as part of your urban growth boundary expansion and go through that process to see if your HNA would be challenged, which leads to that you could spend hundreds of thousands of dollars doing a UGB expansion and then be taken to task and appealed to the Land Use Board of Appeals on your HNA, which effectively makes your UGB work kind of moot. So we are continuing to have conversations with DLCD staff on that topic. Your HPS is supposed to be adopted. So our housing needs analysis was originally identified to be adopted in 2022. And so we submitted it until we run into this issue I just explained in October. So we're working forward with that. And so Beth, correct me if I'm wrong, but we have 1 year after the housing needs analysis is adopted that we have to adopt the housing production strategy. So on DLCD schedule, and I didn't look it back up before the meeting, but we were originally scheduled to adopt an HPS in 2023, I believe it was, but we moved that forward because we had the ability to apply to DLCD to get grant funds to prepare the HPS. So that was a long answer, Casey. I apologize. There's some moving pieces to it still.
Yeah. So could these groups adopt it as advisory for now? And then once the HNA is approved, then they have 1 year to adopt it. What's the opposite of advisory? Binding?
It could be advisory in nature. Again, you know, a recommendation could be is that you're recommending that the Planning Commission, the City Council review and consider adoption of a housing production strategy. It's not binding in that. It's just saying review and consider.
I guess personally, I hate to do all this work and then recommend, oh, just consider it. You know, I mean, if we don't believe in it enough to say we think you should pass it, we kind of wasted our time. But I understand the complication of the housing needs analysis stuff as well. I'm interested in what others think.
I agree with you, Larry. I mean, there's a lot of work that has gone into this. What happens if we recommend approval and the HNA isn't approved?
You know, yours is, this committee's is only a recommendation. It's not binding. The authority to adopt a housing production strategy rests with the City Council. Planning Commission is only advisory as well.
Well, I guess I assume that our recommendation, even to pass it, is it's not time bound necessarily. I mean, not that we need to say we think you should pass it as soon as you get the HNA passed, but just kind of let that be communicated in other ways. I don't know. I don't know what's the best way to approach that.
Leslie, any thoughts?
I feel like I'm playing catch up. I haven't even seen the HPA, so I should read it and get caught up before I give thoughts, I think. Sorry.
It's all right. Just as a reminder to everyone, this is your last Citizens Advisory Committee meeting.
It's so close to being done. I feel like at a minimum, I want the other two groups to go ahead and review it, like be aware of it so they can start their feedback process. But man, I would love to recommend something with a little more teeth, you know, and review and do something.
So even if the city doesn't have an HCA, there's no reason it can't start implementing pieces of the housing production strategy. Like doing the things in here, the city could have done any of these before a housing production strategy was required. And the city has done some things that some cities are putting into a housing production strategy, like implementing a CET, or many cities have adopted what do you call it? Things like MUPD, tax exemptions outside of the context of an HPS. So there's no reason that you couldn't, from my perspective, I'm putting words into Doug's mouth, begin implementation of the actions in the HPS, even while issues around the HCA are being argued about.
I guess I would suggest or like to entertain a motion that we recommend the passing of this to both the planning commission and the city council. Again, they don't have to do what we say, but again, this is our kind of our thing that we've developed. If we don't really feel like it's worth suggesting they pass it, then we should have found something else to do with our time.
I agree.
Does somebody want to so move that?
I so move.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All right.
Who did the second? Casey did? Okay.
I pointed at her.
Well, I was looking at my paper
I
writing.
know. Yeah. I mean, any other discussion? I don't want to shut off any discussion, but
No, but I do think that also, in addition to what Beth said, like what's in the report will have more immediate actions. More analysis is just gonna what? Or doing a UGB growth, like, okay, so what's gonna happen? Like this kind of stuff can happen now and have a more near impact than any of the things that it sounds like we're waiting on.
And I will mention, if you expand your UGB, if you did it today, which of course you can't, it takes years for that land to come online, to be ready to be developed, because of need to plan for infrastructure, et cetera, et cetera. So.
all right, well, we have a motion and a second to recommend this to the planning commission and the city council. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye, whatever you want to say. All
Aye.
right. Any opposed? Are you abstaining, Leslie?
Well, I just feel so ignorant, like,
Hey, trust us. Come on. No,
I
just
do, I
do what you need
absolutely
to
trust
do.
you.
You do what you need to do. That's all right.
Is there a stand aside option? This isn't Quaker, but
We
A
didn't say
clarifying
it.
question. Like specifically logistically, like what happens next? Because we recommend they review and approve it. Does it automatically go on their agenda, or do they have to take a vote? Do both entities have to take a vote on whether or not they want to review it?
So with your recommendation, I will go to the city council on March 6th, and I will respond to questions they have about the document, and they may come up with suggested modifications to it. Then we could make those modifications and then take it forward to the planning commission, who would review it. Then they would develop a recommendation by resolution to the city council. And then on the schedule on May 1st, we would take the document with the CAC's recommendation, the planning commission's recommendation, and take that forward to the city council. And then the city council will have to make the determination, do they adopt the HPS by resolution? Do they say, we've gone this far, but we're not ready yet? And so they put it on hold. At that juncture, we've got pretty much an HPS document that's sitting there that I can submit to DLCD in order to fulfill our grant requirements. But I'd have to have some conversations with them on that as well, because I have to submit all the final paperwork and so forth by the end of May of 2023 to the state.
So March 6th in front of council, will they hear at that point that this group has recommended it, or it's at the later meeting that they hear that?
It depends on if they ask the question on March 6th or not, but definitely they would see it on May 1st.
Okay, so is there any other business we need to do? Not to be, snappy or anything, but
Just one thing that's a little bit off topic, because your other hat you're wearing is the Affordable Housing Commission. So Matthew has resigned from the commission. There will be no meeting in February that was talked about at the last one. So your next meeting will be coming up in April. Regular
Wait.
scheduled meeting.
So we'd had the meeting. Sorry, I couldn't make it. My dog's all healed up now. So then we were rescheduling for February, and this is to review and talk about those applications, right?
Correct.
So now you're saying April, and it's still just those, was it 2? The
Yeah.
2?
So the issue that we have is I need to have a quorum.
And okay, so I know that there was another woman who dropped off, EGOF, right? So how many are on there now?
So there's a total of 6 of you on the Affordable Housing Commission. 2 would have to recuse themselves. So that would leave 4, and 1 just resigned today. So that's 3. So I don't have enough for a quorum.
Oh my gosh. And a quorum is based on 6, not of how many people are currently on it.
It's based on 6.
Huh.
So I just wanted to inform you all that there will not be a February meeting.
Well, speaking of this, Doug, I did have a question, because one thing I do a lot of is review grants and applications and stuff, and especially for development. And the one from, for the homelessness, the $800,000 project, I was wondering if we could get a little more information on their financials, because with what they're asking for, and then from the grant versus the amount of money the entire project is going to cost, it said that they're going to have quite a bit more fundraising that they needed to do, and they only had maybe like
Yes.
half of it.
So Melissa, I might just say, since we're not actually at an affordable
Yeah.
housing.
Well,
if
could we
you
get
have-
more information? Could we
Yeah.
get more information
You
from
can
them?
always send me an email with your questions.
Okay.
And Doug, I'm assuming that the April meeting, we will probably have other business as well, or if there is regular business. I mean, that's our regular quarterly meeting
Correct.
anyway, so
Yes.
that we're not able to get the part with the applications done early because of, but we're hopeful to have another person join us by April.
I will have to talk to leadership about that dynamic.
Yep.
Is there another opportunity between now and April for additional applications to come in?
No, the window for application submittal ended.
Okay, anything else? Not trying to rush you or anything.
I don't have anything else for you.
Doug, do you have anything else for us?
I have nothing else on the HPS topic.
Okay, I guess I would say can I just say we're adjourned, or do we have to vote on it?
You can say you're adjourned. I just wanted to say thank you all for your time and your efforts in putting this together. It's very much appreciated.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
and thanks Beth and Leanne for your work as well. All right, well, folks, thank you. We are adjourned. Go have fun.